তোর শুধু হেল্প নয় এক্সট্রা হেল্প করেছি এক্সট্রা হেল্প করেছি কি করে বলি এতটা হেল্প করবো কি করে আর ভাবটা তুই নকটি দেখিয়ে দিয়ে এই যে সামনে আরে ইজিতে এই জায়গাটা মনেই নেই
Your turn to ban. 5 seconds remaining. Your turn to pick.
আরে শুনো করছিস কি
Your turn to pick. Your turn to pick. Your turn to pick.
I'm a straight shooter. Of course.
Prepare for battle.
I gust onward.
हमारी क्या है? कहाँ नहीं जाएगा? नहीं फिर भी मतलब कि वो आया सर उन्हें आया लेकिन मेरे को दिया था हाँ तो सर उन्हें तो आया फिर भी मेरे को दिया था सुना अलग बाई चांस
ওই তো ওই তো ওই তো সবাই 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 বলে দিতে হবে
30 seconds to battle.
On my way.
যা 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 এবার যা যা তুমি আর এর মধ্যে এলিমিনেট করতে পারবে না আরো ভালো
Already moving.
The battle begins.
Time for target practice. On it. As the arrow flies, I go. On it. I'm way ahead. Here, have an arrow. I'm way ahead. I go. Course. Reach the whirlwind. As the arrow flies, try this on for size. Another arrow in my quiver. Get my point? Denied. Accent. I gust onward. Catch my point? Got my wind up. Is it raining arrows? Attack! Attack! On! Every coin helps. Feel the wind in your hair. Already moving. I steal from the slow. Taste my arrow. Here, have an arrow. On my way. On it. I go. On my way.
আমি আসতে
I'm way ahead.
ওখানে নামবো না সেওয়ানিতে হচ্ছে না ভাই ভালো
Already moving.
না 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 এটা বলবো সেওয়ানিতে হচ্ছে ভালো ভাই
I gust onward. Of course. As the arrow flies. Of course. Attack! Is it raining arrows? I gust onward. I'm under attack. On my way. As the arrow flies. I go. You've got my wing up. Ninja. I'm way ahead. Try this on for size. On it.
What did you like that?
Already moving. Taste my arrow. You catch my point? Already moving.
चुका लोका
On my way. Of course. I go. As the arrow flies. Missing top.
अरे चलो
Reap the whirlwind. On it.
ना तो कहते हैं आपको कोई बात नहीं डिजाइन को
I gust onward.
এখানে একটাই আছে
I'm way ahead.
Tower is under attack. are fortified.
Have an arrow. I'm way ahead. Of course. I'm under attack.
ও আচ্ছা 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 আচ্ছা
Range increases. I gust on. You've got my wind up. On my way.
না বন্ধ করে বলে তো ভালো কিছু মারলাম
Already moving.
কাছে না কাছে
Every coin helps.
এবার দেখেছি এবার আমি মারতে পারি কি আছে শুনে এনগেজ কর
Your bottom tower is under attack.
You catch my point? Attack! Reap the whirlwind.
দুটো
Taste my arrow.
ও বাবা মুসে নিয়ে গেছে আবার
I go. As the arrow flies. As the arrow flies. Already moving. On it. I gust onward. At them. I'm way ahead. Attack! Try this on for size. Of course. On my way. I got the wind. Oh, sad for you. I go.
The enemy's middle tower has fallen. Our structures are fortified.
I'm way ahead. On it.
The enemy's top tower has fallen.
I gust onward. On my way. Is it raining arrows? Of course.
under attack.
Chona, I will get you.
Drow, Ranger, where did you learn to shoot? As the arrow flies.
अरे लूट पुलिस ना आए जाएगा
Of course. I've got it on. As the arrow flies.
Dire structures are fortified.
I go.
ये तो यार
I'm way ahead. I'm way ahead.
Radiant structures are fortified.
You got visuals.
আমি অ্যাকচুয়ালি যখন এখন ভিডিওতে দেখেছি দুটো ভাবি ভিডিওতে এটাতে বলছি
Dire structures are fortified.
My next arrow will find its mark. On it.
আর জানেন এসে বলছি মেরে
My feet fly. I gust onward. As the arrow flies.
ও কাপিচ
I go. Of course.
Your bottom tower is under attack.
খোঁজ
Attack! Already moving. On my way.
Your middle tower is under attack.
On it. I go.
Your top tower is under attack.
I just on. Here it goes. On it. Two for one. As the arrow flies.
না আমি কি চাই সিমেন্ট ফ্যাক্টরি চাই আর গাড়ি ওখানে আছে
I'm way ahead.
কোথায় এটা লোক বলে মানে দেখছি কি খুব লোক ছিল মানে আমি ব্লকটা দেখছিলাম দেখ দুশো থেকে বসে আছে
Your top tower is under attack.
Every coin helps.
Radiant structures are fortified.
On it.
দুশো থেকে সামনে দুশো আছে
On it. I go. Attack. As an arrow flies. I gust onward. Already moving.
আরে পারবে না খুব শোন না তিনজনা মিলে গেলে ওরা পারবে না খুবই বাজে খেলে ওইটুকু মাত্র কি আমাকে যেতে সহায়তা দিয়েছিল
Damage. On my way.
Your top tower is under attack.
Of course. The goal leads.
Is under attack.
As the arrow flies.
কিন্তু বললেন তো কম
I gust onward. Here, have an arrow.
Dire structures are fortified.
Try the softer side.
Your bottom tower is under attack. The enemy's top tower has fallen.
তিনজনা আছে উমা আজ আজও ভাই কেন করি যারা
I'm way ahead. Already moving.
This will come in handy.
I go. On it. On it.
এখানে চলে
I go. My feet fly. Here goes. Grows. Bullseye.
এসিয়াতে গেল
On it.
আরে কি দরকার নেই
More for your money. Already moving.
চল চল চল
I'm way ahead. On my way. As the arrow flies. Gust on. Already moving. As the arrow flies. On my way. Of course. On it.
Are you sure Vicky was it?
I'm way ahead. On it. Gust on. Of course. Mighty fly. At them. I go.
Radiant's courier has been killed.
On my way. I run like a wind. Way ahead. Reap the whirlwind. As the arrow flies. Already moving. Winds rising. Of course. I'm way ahead. Catch my point? At them. As the arrow flies. Incoming!
Dire structures are fortified. tower is under attack.
Like the wind. Here it comes. You're not going anywhere. I gust onward. I go. Lucky King Bar. Try this exercise. Already moving. On. On my way. I run like the wind. I'm not ready. On my way. I gust onward. Horse. I go.
The enemy's bottom tower, the enemy's middle barracks, has fallen.
Reach the world.
The enemy's bottom barracks,
Here it comes.
the enemy's middle tower has fallen.
I'm waiting my prize. Here it comes. I gust onward.
Your top tower is under attack. Radiant
क्या बोला इनका मिला तो
sniper ও দিয়েছি